Välkomna hit till det här webbinariet om företagsvärderingar och hur man ökar värdet på ditt företag. Som vi på Bron är med och arrangerar tillsammans med Scalex och HDS. Och jag som introducerar här heter Linda och jobbar på Bron. Och det här seminariet hålls ju både på svenska och engelska. Ashley pratar engelska men förstår svenska jättebra, så att ni får gärna ställa frågor på svenska om det känns bättre. Det är väl en kort introduktion innan jag tänkte berätta lite grann om Bron Innovation innan jag lämnar över till dagens talare. Ja, Bron Innovation, vi är ju ett IT-kluster som jobbar i Västernorrland som jobbar för samverkan, kompetens och digital innovation. Och vårt främsta fokus är ju att öka digitaliseringen och innovationstakten i Västernorrland. Och vi är lite speciella. Vi har ju väldigt många ägare. Vi är ju en förening och som ägs utav många olika bolag här i det är både spritt i både Västernorrland och andra delar av Sverige. Men här ser ni våra ägare. Och det är totalt drygt 80 stycken. Så nu tänkte jag lämna över till dig, Ashley.
Let's get started, everyone. There's a lot to get through, so I'm going to move fairly quickly. But we're going to have a bit of fun talking about a really interesting subject. That's also a complex subject. So, of course, I'm not going to be able to give you everything in 45 minutes, but I just want to get your curiosity opening up and start some sort of processes in your minds, okay, today. So if we look at the focus here, my brief is med fokus på att hjälpa grundare av startups att förstå och optimera värdet av sitt företag, okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to say is just flip this to English. If you're a Swedish company, a startup or a scale up, like many of my customers, we start with English on day one because ultimately we're going to go on an international journey. I'm chairman of a SaaS company in Östersund called Car Care, very proud of that. And we're going international now. We're going to the UK and we have British board members joining the team. So from day one, we've done everything in English. Swedes are great at English. It's a good way to practice today. So we'll do the session in English for that reason. So I'm flipping the title now into 7 ways to optimize the value of your startup and scale up. I'm including scale up in the definition here. So I'm going to give you 7 things. So you can write these down, 7 words, 7 things I want you to think about. And of those 7 things, choose 2 of them that you're going to take with you at the end. Okay, so Linda can ask you at the end, which 2 are you going to focus on? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. A little bit about us, our team here. We've got, I'm in the way here, but myself, Magnus and Johanna, we're looking after you, our team. So you can reach out to us after the session, or one of us may reach out to you as well. If you want to follow us on LinkedIn, please do that as well. Our purpose, we want to unlock scale in SMEs, in Swedish SMEs, and we want to have a positive impact on our environment, society, and the economy by doing this. If we focus and scale up and do great work in our own work, then we can have a positive impact. Valuation is a key part in that, actually, interestingly. We like talking about these subjects, a lot of webinars we work with, so please sign up to our newsletter. You can get invited to other content. Here's some example of some previous webinars we've been working on that you can find on our homepage. I thought I'd talk a little bit about my background that I think is relevant for the subject today. I started my career in London in private equity, which is kind of an elite element of the finance sector. And I worked at 3i. We had about 3,200 portfolio companies. I was trained through their academy. One of their main deals I did was the Power League deal, which is a 5-side football business in the UK. That was a £50 million transaction. I was in my 20s doing this. I worked with Claude Littner as my chairman. He's on the UK Apprentice. If any of you have watched it, he's the scary guy at the end when they have to do their interviews. I had him as my chairman, and valuation was key. Throughout all of this, I was working only as an owner of company. And this is where I learned these skills that I'm going to share with you today. So let's get stuck into this. 7 ways to optimize the value of your startup scale up. So number 1, I feel is the most important principle. So this number 1, I want you to write down. Okay, so let's focus this grundare, owners. When we hear grundare, we say founder, which means to me the owner who starts the company. So I'm talking about an owner. I show a photo here about climbing. I'm inspired by people who go up Everest to do ambitious things. And what we're talking about here is the role of the climber, and you need the skills to climb the mountain. So when you're an owner, you need to own, like the climber, you want to know how to be a climber if you're going to climb a mountain. You don't want to be a cyclist and climb the mountain. So the first thing I notice is a lot of people don't understand the owner role. They don't understand the skills you need in that role, and therefore they do it badly. So valuation is a key, like, core skill in your owner skill set. So you want to start learning your owner skill set and doing it straight away. We look at this in sort of 3 levels. So the owner, the board team, and I know Linda had a good question on this, we'll pick up later, and the C team. So execution, there are 3 levels, okay? So when I worked at 3i, I only did the owner level, Claude, I had on my board, and then we had our C team, our leadership team, who are doing the execution. So what I'm focusing on here is the owner role, that you understand that first. And when we talk about valuation, you're not talking about it as the CEO, you're talking about it as the owner of the company, the one who owns the shares and how much those shares are worth, okay? And what I'm saying as a Scalex tip is that you put time on this role. So it's like getting a 6-pack. If you do an hour of sit-ups every week, you're going to get a good 6-pack. If you do an hour on your owner work every week, maybe 50 hours a year, you're going to get better at the owner work. A lot of people do nothing and they don't have a 6-pack. Okay, so it's marginal gains. Start working. And this webinar today is part of your 1 hour for this week. All right. So what we also do is work with our customers in and around the owner role. So there are different aspects that you can focus on to train. Today, we're going to focus on valuation, train on that. And that comes a little bit under goals, and it comes a little bit on owner outputs. So number 1, write that down, owner role. Good. Linda, are we good? Things going moving well? Yeah?
Yes, allt ser bra ut, inga frågor än så länge. Men
No,
jag
great.
har
So
förresten jag har en jättebra
Linda,
fråga.
Shoot.
Jag har en fråga till deltagarna. Är det någon av er som har gjort en värdering av ert bolag innan? Det ska vara jätteintressant att veta. Skriv i chatten i så fall.
Yeah, so write that in the chat and I'll keep talking so we get, and then Linda will pick it up at the end of the next point when I stop. Okay, it's a great question, Linda. So while you're writing that, I'll keep going. Number 2. So now we know it's the owner skill. So when you talk about valuation, it's I've got my owner hat on, I'm sharpening my owner skills. How do I get good at that, Ashley? Okay, and like Linda said, some of you maybe even started it. Some of you maybe even looked at valuation a bit. Well, if we were going to be this climber and we're going to go up Everest, and when you climb up Everest, you're going to plan the route up. Okay, so you're going to do it in stages. And what we have worked with, this is we call our Scalex owner canvas. We start here on owner goals and sprints. This is a key starting point and something that Magnus leads up in our team. And what we do here is liken it to going up Everest. So if you're going to climb up Everest, they break it down into 6 stages. Now, what we call this is sprints. So sprint 1, you go to the base camp, you have to acclimatize, then you have to go through the icefall, glaciers, you need, ladders, you need a certain team to get through that. Then you go to the Valley of Silence and so on until you get up to the death zone. Now, what you notice here, I've put the altitude meters, okay, as I go up the mountain. Now, what we do is we liken this to your scale up journey. We put the journey into sprints, and each sprint has an objective and an evaluation objective. So we structure this, we work systematically with it, okay? Now, if I turn these sprints into a diagram, and this is how we work, you might say sprint 1, I'm at a 10 million valuation, sprint 2, I'm at 20, sprint 3, 40, and so on. And I want to exit when it's worth 240 million. Maybe I attach funding rounds to these sprints, going to raise capital. I have a runway for each sprint, the timing. Now, this is something we set structure to. So if you were going to climb up Everest, you would do this planning, because otherwise you're taking too much risk. A lot of owners I see very rarely even plan sprint 1. So we want to change that. We want to inspire you to think differently about that. So the Scalex tip, organize your owner journey into sprints with clear goals and valuation targets for each sprint. Now, I don't mind even if you're guessing that to begin with. A plan, some form of base plan is better than no plan, okay? So number 2, set your sprints. Start working that, put that down on your to-do list. Linda, how are we doing in the chat?
Det ser bra ut, inga frågor. Ja.
Good, I will continue. Thank you, Linda. Number 3, next interesting thing. So you've worked out, you put your owner hat on. We're doing those owner sit-ups. We're going to start working valuation. I've given you a task already. The next thing you're going to say is, well, Ashley, I've set this plan. How do my peer group look? How do they work? Okay. So if you imagine if I'm in a running race, what I would do is think, well, how do I run compared to other people in my peer group? And when I mean by peer group, if I'm a startup, maybe I'm, the under 12s, 100 meters. I'm going to compare myself to other under 12s doing 100 meters. I'm not going to compare them to the veterans doing marathons. So you find people who are comparable and you take inspiration from them. What we also do when we work with our customers is try to look at valuation again with a canvas. We use an owner canvas. We have a valuation canvas that we work with. And one of the things that we start to do is highlight this and help you to make it easier for you to think about your peer group. So one of the things we start to work out is you're a startup, not a mature company. So when you value companies, you value startups in a different way to mature companies. We're doing this for owner planning. And the stage of the company is important. So let me talk a little bit more about that. That's a bit like what race you're in or what age category you're at. So let's look at the stage of the startup. These are the definitions we work with. So you've got the idea stage, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, and then it goes to Series C. And if you look at Spotify at the moment, I think they're raising Series H. So it just goes up in levels. So essentially, these are like leveling up in your computer game. So you start at the idea stage, you don't have any turnover. Pre-seed, you're up to 10 million turnover. Seed, you're at 50 million, and so on. So you place yourself in a category, like in a running race, like you say, what age category I'm in. And then we look at the sector. So the sector drives the multiples and other data. So if we work a lot with SaaS companies at Scalex, we have a lot that we're helping at the moment, setting up their boards, working with their valuations, doing the owner planning. So let's pick SaaS. It could be fintech, it could be AI, it could be e-commerce we also work with. But let's take SaaS. And then what I do is I look at all the data of all the Swedish companies that are working in SaaS. And then I can look at the different stage of the the age category, if you take it like that, like the race. So this is like the 100 meters, the 12-year-olds and the adults and so on. And what you can see here is if I have an idea stage, like going in at round 1, the median value of a SaaS company in Sweden in last year would have been 13 million crowns. And the top 10% performers would be at 20 million. If you go down to Series B, a Series B company, you're looking at a value of 1.7 billion to 3 billion crowns. So you can see a big range. And what we're seeing here is to give you a shape and a frame of reference. Okay. And then what we do is we put that back into our canvas and we think, well, we're a startup, we're benchmarking SaaS. Let's move out of the way here. And the median value there is 13 million crowns. And we're an idea stage company. So the Scalex tip that I'm giving you here is collect a group of companies you want to benchmark against, follow their progress, review this when you're working on an owner plan. When I'm working, if I give an example at Car Care, where we're chairman, when we're working there, we'll look at SaaS companies that are 3 years ahead of us. They're going to the United States or something like that, and we'll then benchmark our own progress against them, what they're doing with funding rounds. So it gives us a point of reference. So point number 3, benchmark. Linda, any questions so far?
Inga frågor och ingen som har gjort någon företagsvärdering heller och som har skrivit i chatten.
That's interesting. That's interesting, isn't it?
Ja, och kanske också därför det här webbinariet är så viktigt. Eller?
Yeah, because you shouldn't be hesitant. Even if you start with something, even if you just do the benchmarking, it gives you context and you can estimate yourself. What do you think? What do I think it's worth? It starts with something. You take your first few steps. So let's go to number 4. You've put your owner hat on, you're doing your owner sit-ups. You set your sprints, your goals, even if you're guessing, you're still doing something to give context. And then you look at the context of that goal set against your peers. And then number 4, what's the next step then? So, well, here we look at the potential of the business. What potential does your company have? Okay, and what I like to give an example here is if you imagine a vase, right? So these are actually Ming vases, like from the Ming dynasty, and they are on auction at Christie's or somewhere in London, and they pay like €1 million for these vases. So these vases have an auction value that is known, and it's €1 million. And then what I've got is my startup. If I take the startup analogy over here, it has a lump of clay on the claying wheel. And they're saying to me, Ashley, I'm going to make one of these Ming vases, right? So, okay, so what you're doing there is you're helping me to understand that if we're successful in making the vase, we're going to make a €1 million Ming vase by the time we get to Series B, okay? But at the moment, actually, I've got a lump of clay on a wheel, right? So you can see what I'm trying to do here is work backwards from the potential of the €1 million back to the lump of clay. So what do I do then? Well, I bring in, if I go back to our canvas here, as you can see, we talked a benchmark, start talking about turnover because our startups don't have profit yet because we're using it for growth. Then I talk about valuation models. One of those models is something called the cash flow DCF, discounted cash flow. I'm not going to go into the techie detail of that today. But basically what it means is I look at the value of that vase in the future at €1 million, and then I work it back in today's value. So if it's in 10 years time, it's worth $1 million, I'm going to work it back to what it could be worth today. Okay, so that's basically the method of it. And what I need to do is look at your turnover planning through to this vase, how it goes through the different stages. And then we're working with your plan potential. How good is your plan? What is it going to be, a Ming vase, or is it going to be something that IKEA would sell? You know, what is the potential of your vase? So number 4, you need to be good at articulating and predicting a plan of what you're building into the future and how that has economic value. Okay, what is your turnover plan? So you need a plan. Linda, how are we looking?
Det ser bra ut. Inga frågor.
I'll continue. Hopefully it's making sense, Linda.
Ja, absolut.
Good. Right. So you've done a plan for me. So you're an owner. You've done your owner sit-ups. You've set your goal. You've looked at your peer group. You've looked at the potential of your SaaS business or whatever, you know, what you're going to build this vase. The next thing you are saying, well, how can I do better, Ashley? You know, how can I optimize it? How can I affect the valuation? All right. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is going into the casino. Yeah. So when I worked at 3i, we used to always look at the odds. So when I did the Power League deal, maybe we're doing an MBO deal and it's a 1 in 3 odds. So I say, if we do 3 deals, one of them will really rake it home. So this is a bit like gambling, looking at the odds on the gambling on the roulette wheel. So what we see here is, I've looked at the same chart that I showed you earlier, these different stages. You've got idea stage, pre-seed, seed. Do you remember I told you the different levels, you know, the age categories? And for each one, there are odds. So if I am a medium player in an idea stage, maybe 1 in 40 are the odds. But by the time I get down to that Ming vase, the odds of that Ming vase being valuable are much, much higher. So the uncertainty is much lower. Okay, so the uncertainty is also having a large impact on the valuation. So it's very important. And a top performing asset maybe has lower uncertainty. So maybe you have the same plan, but one has a lot lower uncertainty. So the investors and the people valuing the company feel more comfortable with your plan. Okay, so this is very important. And what we do at Scalex is we come in and just look at some of the key scoring factors that you want to look at that are going to reduce uncertainty. So the owner team, how strong is the owner team? How well funded are they? How strong is the board team? And Linda, I know you were asking me about that earlier. The board team can just be advisory, it can be formal, but basically talented individuals, like we're bringing the Brits on for car care. They're top people that are going to reduce uncertainty in our UK launch. Okay, so we've got talented individuals or not. How good is our execution team, the people who do stuff? What proof and evidence have they got that they've made a vase like this before? Or is it your first vase? And then there's a number of different things we look at. And what we do is score you where you stand today. And then what I try and work out is, well, this case, how uncertain is this case compared to that case? So we get some sort of uncertainty score, and we try and force you to think about this in your owner role. Okay. So the Scalex tip we're giving you here is evaluate yourself. How do you score compared to your peer group? Okay, so how do I score in the owner team? How strong is my owner team? How strong is my board? How strong is my C team? How much have I proven that I can build that boss? Okay, and how do I improve this, right? But the first point is to understand where you are at today, like a new Lego. So the thing I'm saying here is number 5, understand uncertainty. So I'm saying uncertainty, certainty. Understand the balance between these two. We good, Linda?
Det är vi. Men jag får en liten fundering till deltagarna här också, om det är okej, Ashley.
Absolutely, shoot.
Ja, men jag ser det är ju flera som har presenterat sig i chatten som faktiskt har någon typ av sån här startup eller scale up. Det ska vara jättekul att veta vart ni ligger i de här nivåerna som Ashley beskrev. Vart befinner ni er i?
Yeah.
Precis. Ja.
Thanks, Linda. So Linda's basically saying, tell us what level you're at. Are you the idea stage? Are you pre-seed? Are you seed? Yeah, and maybe what you could do is put the turnover in, if you don't mind sharing that. It's public information, but basically, yeah, give us a scale of where are you at on the scale? Which race are you in? Which age category, you could say, in the race? Okay, great question. Thanks, Linda. So you guys pop that in the chat and Linda will look at that. So number 6, so number 5, you've understood uncertainty and you've understood how uncertain is my company compared to the others. So you've done some sort of assessment, right? And then when you've done your assessment, and then remember, we've already set our goals here. We've looked at our sprints. We've looked at where we're going to go, look how we're going to get up the mountain. We've looked at how fast other people go up the mountain. Okay, so we understand, and we look at how well equipped our climbing gear is and how much risk is it when we go up the mountain. Then what I'm going to say, well, how can I improve my position? How can I optimize it? How can I reduce the uncertainty, actually? That seems like that's important. Well, that's a great question. Let's look at that. I put it into optimize into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is saying optimize. So that's saying making something as effective or efficient as possible. So it's about finding your goal, ChatGPT is saying here, and then you're improving processes or systems. So what I like about this is we like at Scalex is to be systematic. Okay, you're systematically working with your owner role. And what we want to do here is systematically work with your uncertainty so you have more certainty and not uncertainty. So let's work systematically with it. And it is worth doing, if I move over here so you can see, but basically, if you go back to that SaaS company I was talking about, if you remember, we checked the value of the top idea stage, the top 10%. They're valued at 20 million, right? Then the median is at 13. Let's just say your SaaS company is valued at 8 million. So what you could say is this: you either all have the same plan, but the plan of this one is very uncertain. You've got no board, you've got a weak funding team. This one has a good board, good investors, they've got money. So the uncertainty is less than that one. And that costs you 12 million crowns. So maybe you could say, well, if I invest in these things, maybe I'm going to go from being worth 8 million to 20. Okay. Now that's assuming the plan is the same. The other thing you could say is that this plan, the certainty is the same, but the plan is bad. Now, the main plan comes from the board team, Linda. So then we were talking about here. So if you've got these experts coming in and helping you with your plan, your strategic plan, that will greatly enhance the plan. And then, of course, it's about how you execute. But it's interesting to look at this. And basically what we're saying is if you work systematically with these questions and reduce uncertainty, improve the plan, you will increase the value of the company inherently. Okay. And what we're doing here is to give you a little bit more words on this, the owner scale team. So when I worked at 3i, we used to take everything to the top. So I just took that scorecard and went, I'm not going to be scored 1 out of 10. I'm going to be scored 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. So when we did startups at 3i, I wouldn't give them 2 million crowns. I'd give them 20 million crowns on day one. I would ensure that someone like Claude, or we'd have a full board team, and I'd make sure they get paid. And I would choose and cherry pick the best C team who are able to work with traction, if you see what I mean. So I was using my resources as an owner to maximize these things. Now, I know that not all of you have those resources, but you can have the right attitude. And if you focus on it from day one, you can start to maximize your potential in each one of these areas. Okay, but it's about working. But the first thing is you need to know about them. And a lot of people who don't know about the role, the owner role, don't know about this, they end up not doing their sit-ups and nothing happens. Okay, nothing happens. So what we're saying is work with these factors systematically. So Scalex tip, start investing in your board team as early as you can. And it doesn't have to be formal. This could be advisory boards, skuggstyrelser, however you like, but you want to have some talented individuals come in on your team, and you build credibility in that strategic plan, reduce uncertainty, and you go with small steps all the time, an hour a week, small steps. This all adds up over time. So number 6, optimize your uncertainty. Linda.
Inga frågor i chatten, men vi har en i alla fall som har svarat att de är i pre-seed-delen.
Interesting. Good. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so you can see where you're classified within it. So it's really interesting. It's a really good start. So you start to identify yourself in the race. I'm pre-seed. What other pre-seed companies are there out there? How are they valued? What sector am I in? And how does it work? So it gives you this point, this frame of reference, so you can take a step and then another step in the right direction, rather than it all being just grey. So thanks for sharing.
Ja, precis. Men förstår jag det rätt där, att det är lättare i den stadiet att få finansiering?
That's an interesting question. What do you mean, Linda? So you're saying...
Nej, utifrån det här diagrammet som du visade, så visar du på sannolikheten liksom i olika stadier, hur man blir värderad och det. Så,
yeah. So the idea stage is the most risky. So that's the 1 in 40. Then you go in, the odds come down like a funnel. So when you go from idea to pre-seed to seed, so each level is lower risk, and there should be a value increase as you level up.
Just det.
Does that make sense?
Absolut.
Yeah.
Sen har jag en till fråga, för det verkar som att det väldigt mycket handlar om människorna i bolaget.
Yes.
Och har du något tips om hur man hittar en bra co-owner?
That's a great question. I mean, I work a lot with BizMaker, who are also, I'm sure you're familiar with them as well. So when you go into BizMaker, they won't even allow you starting in BizMaker without having a co-owner, because it's so important, by the way. But you can go to the incubator. So when you're doing a startup, the incubators are specialized in this. So that's a super way to begin there. Of course, then you work with your owner, with your network, and it's obviously someone, when you have a co-founder, someone you want to enjoy working with. So you want someone you're going to spend a lot of time with, and you complement each other well. But my top tip really is to go, when you're at that stage, idea stage, is go through the incubators, and the incubator will insist on it, and they can help you network and find other people as well. Does that answer your question, Linda?
Tack.
Very good. So let's move on. Let's move on to number 7 here. So you've gone through these different processes I taught. You've just been working on optimization and looking, well, how can I reduce uncertainty? Even if I take a small step up the mountain in reducing uncertainty, I'm doing it. At least I'm doing something, rather than just putting my head in the sand and not thinking about it. But what we want you to do as an owner as well is, we talk very much about working on the business. This is kind of one of our other webinars. We focus in on this, but basically we talk about the core kiosk. You're stuck in the core kiosk. You're making sausages every day. You're not really seeing the bigger picture. You're not working out, I've done nothing on my board. I don't know what the company's worth. I'm not benchmarking, because these are all what we call on questions. They're like when you've gone out of the core kiosk, walked across the square, and you're looking at it. Yeah. So you need to step back and look on, and the owner role is very much being on. It's not about doing stuff like that. Okay, it's not in the kiosk making sausages. So what we want you to do when you're going up the mountain, you're going to be stepping back and reflecting on progress. How are we moving up Everest? How did the last sprint go? Are we making the altitude increase that we want? So you're reflecting. Okay, so when you do an optimization process, you're reflecting. So the tip we're saying here is we want you to at least value the company at least once per year. So a very common mistake I've seen is entrepreneurs who never value their company. They have the company for 20 years. And then 3 months before they're going to sell the most valuable thing in their whole lives, then they start working out what it's worth when they talk to the person who's going to sell the company. That's way too late. There's no way you can influence it. They don't even understand what the company's worth. Maybe they have an unrealistic valuation expectation. So what we're saying here, like you've asked the question already, Linda, have you valued the company? You need to start doing it. You start doing it at least once a year. Be curious about it. If you're going to make mistakes in the valuation when the company is not worth very much. You don't want to make mistakes when it's, you know, much more valuable, right? So it's like that vase. You don't want to sell that vase at Antiques Rundon for 100 crowns and it's worth €1 million because you haven't understood what the vase is worth, okay? And measure progress, understand the technique, review this, optimize this, and put it into your skill set. So number 7, re-evaluate, step back at least once a year. And when Magnus is working with our scale plans, we always build this into our coaching program that we work with our scale ups. So that will be in your scale plan and we'll do it at least once a year. So Linda, I thought I'd do a wrap up and hand over to you really. So my main question that I wanted to say to the participants today is I'm giving you 7 things. I want you to pick 2 of these things that you're going to work on. Okay, at least. I mean, write all 7 down, but there could be 2 things that you're going to say, actually, I'm going to, in my hour that I've got next week, I'm going to work on these 2 things, or 1. Yeah. So you've got number 1, which is the hour a week. That's the owner role. Start working with the owner role. There are plenty of people who can help you. We're owner coaches, owner PTs. There are other people who can help you as well, but start building your owner team and working with your owner skill set. Number 2, work with your goals and sprints. Get sharp on this. I don't mind if it's just a guesstimate of your goals. It shapes you and forces you to think. Again, people like us can help you with this, but get that set. Number 3, benchmark yourself against your peers in the same age category and in the same race, so you can see how good or not good you are. Then you work with your potential, what that Ming vase is going to look like. Number 4, what is my true potential here with my business plan? Then number 5, understand your uncertainty, certainty. So self-evaluate, understand your new leg. Number 6, if you remember the 8 million, the 30 million, 12 million, that's the difference of what uncertainty, certainty makes. Optimize, understand that, optimize that, work with your board, work with your owner team, work with these different factors. And then number 7, reevaluate. Step back at least once a year and check the value of your company. Yeah. Good. I'll hand back to you, Linda, but maybe everyone could just write those 2 things. If I could ask one thing, but then I'll take your questions, Linda. If maybe everyone could just write their 2 things that they want to focus on. You can say the numbers.
Vilka 2 tips tar ni med er från Ashley här? Skriv gärna ner i chatten, eller om det är någon som vill dela med sig också, tänker jag, så kan ni räcka upp handen så får ni prata. Men annars jättebra, Ashley. Hur kändes det för dig?
That feels really good to be here talking about this subject. I think it's super that we get the chance to lift up this subject, and I think it can sound boring sometimes. Valuation, it can sound very techy when you talk to the tools around it, but actually, it's once you start working with, and we normally talk about comfortable and uncomfortable. To begin with, it can feel a bit uncomfortable talking about some of these things, but the more you become comfortable with it, it's not that scary and it's quite common sense. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to start, like with your training, with your sit-up training or whatever it is, what muscle you're strengthening, and the sooner you start working with this, the easier it gets, particularly if you have a coach or other people helping you on that journey. So it's great I just want to inspire you all to build your skill set, and primarily as an owner, but awesome to have the chance to share this with you and have the chance to be here today. So if anyone's got any other questions, otherwise you can reach me on LinkedIn, or find me or Johanna or Magnus and catch up with us as well afterwards.
But you've been talking about both about startups and more established companies. What is the main difference here when you do valuation of established company that has been around and has a cash flow and has a result and a turnover, and a startup that is a very early stage and it's not that much evidence or maybe not that much sales? How do you think in these two situations?
I mean, it's overall, it's essentially the same thing. So what you're basically saying, if you remember the uncertainty levels of a mature company, the uncertainty levels are a lot lower, you would argue, and they would have a profit base. So you would be much easier to identify the in the cash flow model that we use, you'd identify profits. So very much focus on a profit multiple. And so it's a more established company, a more mature company, has less uncertainty. So it means you can do a more traditional sort of valuation. When we're working with a startup, there's so much uncertainty. We're looking for other kind of data sources, but essentially the methodology is the same, but it has a slightly different, it has another angle. Like, for example, you can't focus on profit, you focus on turnover often. Does that answer the question, Magnus?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Om inte annat så får vi tacka så mycket och tack till Ashley och tack till alla er som har deltagit, och ha en fortsatt bra dag.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Take care. Have a super day. Bye now.
Hej då.